Hey everybody, it's Derek Martin from CodeOpinion.com, and I'd rather read a longer method in the example I'm about to show, maybe about 50 lines, instead of using extract method all over the place and adding a lot of indirection. So let's run through this example I created, and then you'll realize this isn't so much of a hot take, it's more about how and when you use extract method. Before I go over all the code, I'd like to thank EventStore for sponsoring this video. EventStoreDB is a new category of operational database built for event sourcing, CQRS, and event-driven microservices. For more on EventStoreDB, check out the link in the description. So this example is a part of a sign up for a user to our chat system. So the first thing we're actually doing is checking to see that their username, that they actually specified something, otherwise we're throwing. The next piece of logic here is that we're looking to see if we have a user in our system with that existing username that they're trying to use. Now, if there is a user in our system, but they haven't been activated yet, that's part of our activation date, is null, and their email address that they're using to sign up, that's what the user name associated to is the exact same thing, then we're assuming it's you, so we're telling you, hey, you've already registered, please activate your account. If the user does exist, then we actually want to say the username is already registered because it's probably to somebody else because it's part of a different email address. From there, we're going to create a new user object. And then this is our list of channels, kind of like groups that you can be a part of your chat system. And maybe we have some channels that require you to be 18 years or older. So what we're doing is saying, okay, when you did your registration, when you signed up, check your birth date. If you're not 18, then we're gonna check all the different channels that allow kids, and then we're just gonna use those ones. So whatever you requested, if you're not 18 and they require you to be over 18, we're just kind of resetting everything and setting the channels to be that you're allowed to actually get to. Then we're basically adding our user, we're saving it, and then we're actually sending an email out, say maybe to welcome you and to give you your activation link. There's a lot going on here, and extract method could probably help us, absolutely. It could also make things a lot harder to follow. So the first thing you're thinking of is we could probably take this conditional statement and then refactor and extract this method. But what is it we actually doing here? We're just really just checking if it's blank, but maybe we might add more to this. So we're thinking, okay, we're just gonna call this validate username. Okay, simple enough for step one. So a really useful thing is just looking at conditionals and saying, okay, what does this actually do? And can we actually give it some meaningful name to represent what it's actually doing? So that might be a good place to do this. So we can extract method. Let's call this existing sign up not yet activated. So we can say, okay, if we have an existing sign up that's not yet activated, we're gonna throw in this particular case. Also, validate username's throwing, plus we have all this logic where, sure, we've kind of named that conditional, but this entire thing, we might want to extract this, and really this is just validate existing user. All right, so now we really have broken this down to validating the username, validating our existing user. So far, so good, right? Well, not exactly in my opinion. I'll explain, but let's keep going. The next code chunk we can look at is probably this, which is if we're under 18, then we want to filter out any channels that require us to be 18 years or older. So here I'm just going to extract this, and we could call this probably filter age restricted channels. All right, there's one more done. And lastly, this is pretty obvious, just the actual email in and of itself. Let's call it just plain and simple, send email. Now let's look at our masterpiece. We're validating the username, validating if they're an existing user, we're creating our user, we're filtering the channels based on their age if we need to, we're saving our user, and sending the email. Pretty simple. Now you might be thinking, well, I would have done this different though. Sure, but my example is trying to illustrate three things. So the first point is it's not obvious everything that's happening at a glance looking at the entry point. Validate username and validate existing user throw exceptions. That's what I extracted. Now I'm gonna have a video about throwing exceptions versus result types separately. So if that's what you're gonna comment is gonna be, stick around for that in a video coming up soon. But I inherently don't know that validate username or existing user are gonna throw. I have to navigate around and look at these methods to realize that, especially if I'm making a change that may actually have to go before these. Like up here, I'd actually have to make some type of change with the request related to the user. Maybe I want to do some different validation rather than I'm doing it here, and it might actually even hit it because I don't know that these are throwing. Now, if those two validate methods were returning a result rather than throwing, then this example would look a lot different. And as mentioned, I'll have a video on this soon. My second point is just indirection. If it's one layer, no big deal. Two, okay, maybe we're all right still. But my example here of validating existing user, I extracted this, but I did it actually second. The first thing I actually did was extract this conditional statement to give it a name, which was great. So when I was looking at the handle method, I'm kind of reading it top down. I jump over to validate existing user. Now I'm jumping over to see what this does. And you can just see how this goes, is that in this particular example, it's fine. I gave it a name, that's great. I can jump back up to this. Maybe that's not the end of the world. I can continue to see what it's doing. Then I can go back up to handle to see how I'm flowing on. But you can see how if you have a lot of indirection, this can get a little out of hand. Now the third point really relates to the first two, which is this filter age restrict channels. I don't really know what it's doing. This doesn't just read like a book because I have to go to filter age restricted channels to know that it's actually changing channels. The scope I've created of channels is here. It's get passed along as an argument. And this method is actually changing it. It's not returning this value. It's actually changing it. Then I'm using it here. So just like validate username that's throwing an exception and I have no idea that's happening unless I go look at it, I have to navigate here as well to know that channels is actually changing. And why I say it that also relates to validate existing user is because I was just doing extract method. That's all I did. But in reality for me, what a better solution to this would be is it not just actually mutating this, is actually returning it. So what does a better extract method or guidelines look like to me? It's just using extract method in a way that helps you identify what's actually happening in small snippets of code. Sure, but that you know exactly what's happening, i.e. don't be throwing in them. Giving logic meaningful names so you can read it like a book. And because of that, not changing the local state of something. I don't want anything unexpected. So here's what my version looks like, and I've done two extract methods. I've left this first conditional. To me, this is self-explanatory. The first one I actually did is I did do the is existing user already activated, and it's just returning a bool, and then I'm throwing from here. The second one I did was the filter age appropriate channels, but the difference is I'm not passing in the list of channels so that it gets changed. I'm just returning it so I can set it directly onto channels. Lastly, we'll say this is 2.5, I guess, of my refactor, is that I actually didn't take that send email, kept it in line, because in reality, I wouldn't want that there in process anyways. I wouldn't want to try catch around it. I want sending the email completely separately. So I'm just going to be publishing an event that I'm going to be reacting to separately in a different process, different thread to actually send out that email. So my basically extract methods are really just two. The existing user already activated, again, it's returning, and then the filter age appropriate channels, same type of thing. It's not mutating anything, it's just returning. Extract method can be great, and I think that's a simple example of it when it's predictable. But if you take my first example, those 50 lines, I would much prefer that than the version I was showing kind of a little bit later on that had the extract method that was throwing exceptions. It was also had another extract method that was calling another extract method. And I had multiple levels of indirection. I was also kind of changing that local scope state with that list. I don't want any part of that. I would much rather that initial 50 lines I was showing or my last version, but not the one in between there. As always, get in the comments and let me know what you think about extract method and the ways that you use it. I'd love to hear about it. And if you want to chat with other software developers, you can join my channel and get access to a private Discord server. Talk about topics like this. People post questions about software architecture and design around domain-driven design, event sourcing, CQRS, those types of topics. Links in the description on how to join. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any other thoughts or questions about this video, let me know in the comments, and then please subscribe for more videos on software architecture and design. Thanks.